Next up then, nines, we're going to put our formulas in, and the formulas here are relatively simple. If I just zoom in, if you remember from Word, you can zoom in by holding down Control and using the mouse wheel. And we're going to start in cell B2. And this cell here, we're going to say that if this cell and this cell and this cell add up to more than 1, then this cell is going to be a 1. But if this one and this one and this one don't add up to more than 1, this is going to be a 0. So, for instance, if that was 1 and 0, add these up and it comes to 2. So this one, because that's more than 1, would be a 1. But if we had this, for instance, add these up and you get a 1, so that would be a 0, which by itself doesn't sound particularly useful, but hopefully what you're going to see is the overall effect once we put in millions of cells with this formula. So what we want is to say if these 3 up here are greater than a certain value, we want it to be one value, else another. So making sure that you've got cell B2 selected, click on this fx, which is going to insert a function. Now the function we're going to use is the if, because that's what we're saying, if something is a certain value, which I can see there. But if you can't see it here, then delete this, type if and go, and you'll see it right at the top there. Once you've done that, press OK. And there's a few things that we need to do now. We need to fill in this one, and this one. And the first is the logical test. And the logical test is something which is true or false. And for us, the logical test is that cell. So if I click on it to select it, plus that cell, plus that cell. Now if these things are greater than 1, then our value, if true, is going to be 1. If this is false, the value that we want to see is 0. If I press OK, what we see now is a 0 here. If I change this to a 1, this automatically updates to a 1. If I change that to a 1, it should remain a 1. If I make all of these zeros, it stays a 0. So I'm going to get rid of this data at the top now, and I'm going to replicate this formula. Now replicating means basically doing something as quickly as possible. I don't want to have to type in the same formula here by doing that and so on, and I don't want to have to do it there and there and there and there and there, because it's going to take me weeks to do it. Because what I want, if I zoom out, is for my image to fill a large part of the screen there. So to do this, I replicate the formula. And it's not quite as simple as dragging and dropping, because you can't just go into a cell and drag it. You have to go to the bottom right of the cell where that box is, and if you do that, the cursor changes to a cross. And if I click and drag now, I can only go in one direction at a time. So if I go across and let go, this has replicated the formulas, which doesn't mean it's exactly the same. This cell here is A1, B1, C1. This cell is B1, C1, D1, C1, D1, E1, and so on, all the way over to here, which is going to be M, N, and O. And once I've replicated them across, I select them, and then, having selected this entire row of cells, I replicate it down. And now if I do this, if I put in the value here, and another one, you can see the effect of all of these formulas. To make this look a little bit more impressive, if I select this one cell and zoom out, I can now do the same. So if I click and drag from the corner and replicate that way, and then replicate down, I've now got a lot more cells to play with. So give this one a go, have a play around with the figures and see if you can get it working, and then in the next video we're going to create a fractal which is slightly more in depth but also more visually engaging.